So the last presentation of day we have is like for next 40 minutes. We have Georgie Matthews, who's Senior Product Manager with AWS, based out of Seattle. So he's going to have this session, which is driving effective digital user engagement using analytics, push notification, SMS, text messages, and email. So please welcome Georgie Matthews.
Good evening, everyone. Georgie Matthews. I'm a Senior Product Manager with AWS in Seattle. And today, I want to talk to you guys about user engagement. Can you guys hear me? Oh, good. Okay, perfect. I want to talk about user engagement and what AWS is doing about user engagement and enabling you guys to effectively engage your end users. So what are we going to talk about today? In today's session, we are going to talk about giving you guys an overview of user engagement, talk about how we are thinking about the solution and building that solution in AWS, talk about the various components of that user engagement architecture, which includes analytics, messaging, targeted messaging, which could be enabling your marketers to or business users to re-engage users, and then how all of it comes together in a cohesive digital user engagement strategy. What is user engagement, right? So every enterprise that I've interacted with, every customer that I've talked to, has multiple channels to engage their end users. These channels could be email, SMS, mobile push, and what every enterprise is struggling with, or every customer is struggling with, is how do we build a cohesive strategy to define that engagement so that that engagement is net positive. Your customer relationship is not just about the relationship you have with the product that you've built. A customer relationship is managed through the entire experience that they have, through the messages that you send out, to the interactions that is even outside of the product. And how do you manage that? So user engagement is enabling you to think about user engagement as how do you get to the right message, to the right customer at the right time, and on the right channel. So being smart about that. And a good example is Amazon.com, right? For a simple message as, hey, your order has been delivered, I get an SMS, I get an email, and I get a mobile push. Is that the most optimized way to communicate with me as a customer? Why did we not factor in the fact that, okay, maybe the best way to reach out to me was just SMS? Can I optimize that? Am I over communicating with the customer? And that's an ongoing problem that many enterprises are struggling with. To define that right customer mix or engagement mix for each customer, to define the right priority for each customer. Right. So why is it difficult? It's difficult because it has multiple components. You have to first understand about each user. You could have different types of user, and through the right kind of analytics platforms, you have to learn about how each users are performing. Then you have to be able to measure the effectiveness of each engagement. So there is an outbound feedback loop, which is an initial feedback loop on customer behavior and user engagement. And then there's a feedback that comes from each of the engagements that you have with the customer. And then based on that, you have to be able to personalize, customize, and also be able to identify the right characteristics to be able to influence your marketing decisions or your messaging decisions. And the fact that each of them have to work well together, that's a struggle. Because today in the industry, right, you have a point solution for your analytics platform. You have a point solution for your messaging on, say, one channel, and you have different solutions for different other purposes. So the biggest problem is each of these individual pieces get treated as individual items. And then how do you bring them together? How do you normalize the data together into a cohesive solution becomes a struggle and becomes an ongoing struggle. So as we've talked earlier, right, you think about this, and then you can break this down, start breaking it down. So Amazon Pinpoint, which is AWS's user engagement solution, breaks it down into user insights and analytics as the inbound for all measuring to understand how users are interacting with your applications or with your products. The outbound is the messaging solutions. And these messaging solutions could be across use cases such as targeted and transactional use cases. Example of a targeted use case could be sending a promotional message or sending an alert to a cohort of users based on their interests. A transactional message could be an order confirmation. And these messages could be across your email, SMS, and push platform. And in the middle lies targeting, segmentation, and all the smarts. How do you make this more smart? How do you make it, how do you think about adding more functionality and accessible to different users in your organization? So that's the smarts here. Now, we've talked about different components and different features that Pinpoint has. How do we start building Pinpoint? How do we start thinking about it? So we started thinking about Pinpoint based on this architecture diagram. And let's first talk about the stakeholders who are engaging with this, right? First is AWS customers. What we learned is user engagement in any enterprise is across multiple stakeholders. There's a developer who is definitely focused on messaging automation and re-engagement mechanisms that are automated. But then there's a business user, there's a marketing team, there's an operations person, and then in some cases there's also a support person who's trying to close the loop during a customer support engagement. And these stakeholders are using engagement and messaging to actually drive results to end users. These could be onboarding, these could be acquisition, activation, or also could be just ongoing re-engagement so that customers come back. Why is this important? In some ways, re-engaging users who you've captured is really important because every product out there spends a ton of money to actually acquire new users, but the investment that's spent into re-engaging those users is not significant enough and is not well thought out. Now you think about these as the stakeholders who use and the product and the stakeholders who will be impacted by the product. And then you have the middle layer. The middle layer, the fundamentals of it is centered, the horizontal is analytics. You have to think about your analytics platform as something that's spanning across all your engagement interfaces. Then you have the engagement management, so as the first vertical, you have the engagement management solution, which enables you to build up the stack functionality such as schedulers, campaign managers, and use that. That vertical needs to be enriched by what they see with what context you can gather about your user. So what are your user management services that capture preferences, etc. And both of them need to be built with, built on top of both of these. You need to build interaction management layers that can link these so that you can personalize and create real-time engagement scenarios. And then last of it is the engagement channels that direct those messages to the users. And these channels could be your email channel, your SMS channel, or your push channel. And any other channels that AWS can support in the future. So one of the components as the horizontal we talked about was user insights and analytics. Let's go deeper into this. And through this presentation, how we're going to go about this is we could do like, hey, what if I was building this app? We'll talk about a customer scenario on how customers are truly using Pinpoint today. And then we can also talk about what other scenarios have we heard of. So in analytics, we are talking about, hey, I want to build a sports app. What are the components of the sports app, right? The sports app has sports news and schedules. You could also have live score and results. And based on those live scores and results, you want to be able to sell tickets and merchandises. Now, when you're thinking about user insights, what do you want to capture? You want to be able to understand how many new users you have. You want to be able to understand the conversion and how the users are interacting with your product. And then you want to be able to understand what is the net impact of all those interactions. For these, you can identify certain KPIs that are relevant. For this particular app, you could say how many daily new users. You could think about what are the purchase counts and what is the unique purchases and what are the behavioral aspects of each of those unique purchases. Now, if that was a problem, how can Pinpoint help? Pinpoint can help with a really scalable events model. So the Pinpoint events model, the unique value proposition on Pinpoint is that it offers you up to 1,500 events. That is the flexibility in the eventing model enables you to actually bring in and personalize based on your business use case. So on the Pinpoint events model, you have attributes and metrics. And in this use case, you could have these as what topics did users subscribe to, what purchases were they making, and then for attributes, you could have what are the platform, device, make, etc. Also, for metrics, you could have what is the number of time spent. The similar model, and now here's where the story starts coming together, is that all the events information that you have, you can similarly track the same kind of eventing or the data model into users and devices. So now you could actually use the same way to look at it into attributes and metrics at each user. So for a user, it could be what is the email address or what's the username. And the attribute could be, again, the platform, device, make, or model. And you could also have what's the number of views, interests, etc. How does this come together? You have the app. You can use mobile SDKs that AWS provides, the JS SDK or a mobile SDK. All of the data then gets sent to Pinpoint. And from Pinpoint, you have two options. One, for more deeper analytics and understanding, you could send that data to Amazon Kinesis. And from Kinesis, stream it to Elasticsearch, S3, or Redshift. And that enables a bigger data analytics layer for you, and then it brings that data in real time to your existing data solutions. Or that data could be sent to the Pinpoint console, where the Pinpoint console is your dashboard capabilities, where your marketing teams or you could be able to quickly see a summary of all the analytics being generated on Pinpoint. Let's see how. Nope. So actually, if you could go back a couple of slides. No. So there's supposed to be a video here, and I'm trying to figure out like, nope, it's not. So basically, that video talks to you about how to create an event. Event is basically a simple. As you initialize a client, you can define event type, and just the event model is a simple: provide an event name, provide the metric, and provide the attribute. And then once you have provided both of these, you are able to actually define the metric and define the event and ingest the event into Pinpoint. Similarly, this is the sample app that we provide on AWS for you to get quickly started. And if you click on this, the video, you will be able to say, hey, as you click on the app, the event gets generated in real time and sent to the backend system. These then get shown onto these dashboards. So this is a dashboard for Pinpoint for usage as well as for custom events. What are the custom events you're generating? And similarly, remember we talked about the Redshift data and the pipeline for Redshift. You can actually stream all of this data down to Redshift via Kinesis, and this is an example and some slides showing that. So now let's talk about enhanced messaging. Enhanced messaging is your direct messaging or transactional messaging use cases for reaching out to customers with use cases such as order confirmations, for use cases such as, hey, there is a score alert or a news alert or a breaking news alert, or even peer-to-peer messaging. So with enhanced messaging, in Pinpoint, we support SMS, mobile push, and email, and now you get a single service layer. So what are the benefits here? One, you get a single service layer to be able to communicate and reach out to your users across each of these channels. Second is the fan-out capabilities, right? On push, for a lot of the news applications customers that I see, message fan-out rate and scale at which messages are fanned out is critical. So customers come to me with use cases where, hey, are you as Pinpoint able to reach out to 1 million users or 10 million users within a minute? So that scale of being able to deliver that at that fan-out rate is extremely important for a lot of customers. Deliverability, for any transport channel that you're operating, maintaining and measuring deliverability is important. This could be important on the SMS use cases is, hey, you're sending an OTP number. You want to ensure that that OTP message is reaching to your end users so that they can actually complete their authentication workflows and measure that deliverability. And then last but not the least is scale and reliability. With AWS, you have the guaranteed benefit of the fact that we deliver billions of messages for customers across the globe, and we deliver them reliably with the metrics for you to be able to evaluate performance on each of those sending. For this session, let's talk about SMS. what are the key value props that we offer on SMS? A breadth of countries for any product that's been looking to offer an SMS solution. The breadth of countries really helps customers because they have a really strong, they can reach out to multiple countries and be able to scale to telecom requirements and regulatory requirements in each of those countries and not worry about it. We can take care of that for you guys. Then a new feature that we are working on right now is basically phone number verify, and it's available right now for you on private preview. And what this does is enables you to actually figure out whether this is a valid phone number or not, so that you can again improve deliverability of your SMS requests. Another feature that I want to talk about here is two-way messaging. So SMS on Pinpoint supports the capability to send out two-way messages using short codes or long codes. And what this can enable is use cases such as a banking customer that I have who wants to send out, who wants to allow customers to be able to send them messages such as what is your balance, and based on the response be able to send them a response back or a message back saying, hey, if your request was a request for balance, make a query and say, get a two-way response to them saying, hey, here's your balance summary. Another feature that we have on SMS is adaptive routing, and the capability that to ensure reliability of our sending and deliverability, what we do is we as AWS maintain a map of what are the most desired routes and a constant state of deliverability across each of our routes. And whenever we see a degradation in deliverability, we will switch over so that to the higher deliverability route to ensure that your messages are sent all the time. And that's something that we are doing for you for our SMS messages out of the box. We talked about two-way SMS. How does that work? So for two-way SMS, the use case here is you can actually receive SMS messages. Moment we say two-way is enabled on a use case, based on the request received, we can actually send that to a SNS topic. For the balance use case that we talked about, that SNS topic can be fronted with a Lambda, and based on the Lambda processing, you could actually recreate a published message from there. Then going further, you could also have help messages. You could also have a response action to a stop message or any other default keywords that you have defined directly handled within the same message scenario. And based on how you configure the keyword, you can then send the response back using the same publish API, and we do that for you based on your settings. Now let's talk about targeted messaging. So what we have done so far is we've talked about how do you build analytics platform into your application, and we talked about the event model. We talked about the messaging platforms and how they're built for deliverability and scale. And then now let's talk about targeted messaging. So as I said earlier, here I'm going to talk through a customer use case, right? And the use case for the customer is Amazon Music. Amazon Music uses Pinpoint extensively for all their targeted messaging. And some of the reasons why they came to us was, hey, they wanted a solution where their marketing teams had a console implementation so that they can build ongoing campaigns and monitor ongoing campaigns. They wanted to be able to implement their philosophies of how do you drive engagement through retention and acquisition, so that as the customers are being acquired, the customers can be acquired for new features, also for new content. For them, re-engaging users is also a great strategy for as adoption for new content that they are having on the platform, and also upselling them. So Amazon Music's upsell here is upselling them from a regular Prime Music consumer to a Prime Unlimited consumer. And then the other benefit they receive from Pinpoint is the integration that Pinpoint has with the data layer, and the ability that Pinpoint can easily work with your S3 implementation or your Redshift implementation, and you can be able to query Redshift, get a segment result, and be able to bring that segment result into Pinpoint for driving targeted messaging or further segmentation on that. And the last bit was scale, right? They have use cases across 7 marketplaces, and they want to be able to have the same solution implemented and scaled across each of those marketplaces. So how do they do it? Everything in the blue is the Pinpoint implementation, but green is the complexity of their system. And how Pinpoint helps here is, if you look at the top bucket here, like on the bullseye segmentation side of this, on the right, top left, what happens there is you're able to quickly see how Pinpoint is able to integrate for all the analytics segmentation queries with the S3, with the Redshift cluster that Amazon has, and being able to pull that data from Redshift into Pinpoint and then fan it out across each of the channels, including Lambda as a channel, and we'll talk about this in some time, and then be able to ingest those events back via Kinesis back into their data ecosystem, which enables them to actually maintain consistency across each of the messages and also have a consistent view of performance of each of those messages. How are they doing this today? So the music team extensively uses the console for Pinpoint to actually build their own segments. So here you can see you can build segments across push, email, SMS, and what they're doing is for each user, Pinpoint allows for each channel, every address of the user is defined as an endpoint, and for each endpoint you can map it back to a user. So as you see here, you have 3 segmentation options. You first select the channel, and then you can define how to segment that user on that channel. Or you could also have used just a send user attribute where you could just define which user to send a message to, or build a list of user IDs so that you can just be able to send to that user ID. And that list of user IDs can be imported using the import segment functionality that you see on the left. That import segment could be a list of endpoints coming straight from your S3, or it could be a list of user IDs. And a lot of customer use cases where we see benefits from this is where customers have their own managed solutions and do not want to create table maps for user ID to address mappings, where they would rather just say, hey, I have just one user ID system. Can I just send a message to just that user ID and let Pinpoint define or decide which message to send based on the payload, which destination to send the message to based on the payload of the message. A good example could be if you had a user ID that has an email, SMS, and a push endpoint. If you, in the message payload, just specified an email message, we'll just send it out to the email endpoint for the user. Here's an example of how you're creating a campaign. So you can create a campaign using the Pinpoint console. You can use substitution for template substitution if you really based on attributes defined on the endpoint. And we support handlebar templating for the console here. And then you can benefit the scheduler functionality to be able to define a schedule for the campaign as you're executing the campaign. So when you start thinking about digital user engagement, how does all of this come together, right? All of this comes together because a customer example that best example illustrates this would be when we talk about a certain sports apps in the US, sports leagues, they have really high use cases across all 3 of them. So one of my customers, they have a really strong analytics use case where they want to be able to bring all of the data and integrate all of the data, not just for application analytics, but also campaign analytics using one streamlined pipeline into their Redshift or data ecosystem, and then be able to influence messaging decisions based on that data as they're in real time. So because they now have all of the channels and all of the analytics coming through the same pipeline, they now have the flexibility to implement messaging strategies that can say, hey, based on an interaction the customer had on email, send them a push message, or vice versa. And based on how customers are reacting to your transactional notifications on a certain channel, be able to tweak that, saying, change this from sending a customer all 3 messages to sending them just a message over an email channel for a class of notifications. For a lot of customers, having this single view of that entire customer interaction is enabling them to actually streamline costs. Because as you think about, as you scale your applications, these these redundancies could add up to a lot of cost on what your total cost of sending messages or in managing that user engagement experience could be. When we talk about like the overall Pinpoint experience, right? AWS historically has provided customers with a lot of building blocks, and we relied on our customers to be able to build on top of those building blocks. Some examples of building blocks on messaging could be SNS that supported supports mobile push and SMS, and SES that supports email. And on analytics could be mobile analytics that supports the analytics offering that we had. With Pinpoint, we decided to bring them together and allow our customers to not have to go about figuring out how to use those building blocks. We said, hey, let's retain the transparency that these building blocks offer and the flexibility the building blocks offer, but bring them together into a more cohesive solution. And that's where the Pinpoint journey started with 2016, when we said, hey, how about we think about bringing mobile analytics and the mobile push pieces of SNS together to offer a up-the-stack solution. And we said that we launched that at reInvent 2016. The moment we launched that at reInvent, we got two sets of feedback, right? One, great. It simplifies us from having to use 2-point solutions, one for messaging and one for analytics, to just one solution, and that adds a lot of benefits. Two, it actually gives us the next set of questions were, hey, you've not done all of it. Can you simplify more? Can you add more functionality? Can you help us move other building blocks off, other point solutions off, especially on SMS email? That's when in 2017 we said, hey, how about we add additional functionality such as direct messaging so that we can capture your transactional use cases. We add functionality to support email, SMS, and on top of push, and then enhance the segmentation capabilities, enhance the analytics capabilities to bring in more of a user context. So remember the send user messages that I was talking about? That's one of the features we added, was how do we enable customers to be able to send messages to individual users and not worry about the destinations or addresses that they have, and not worry about the mappings there. Then the last functionality we talked about and added was extensibility. We believe that we will never support all of the channels offered, and that could cover all of customers' use cases. We want to offer the flexibility for customers to be able to bring their own channels, and that's where Lambda as a channel enables us to add that flexibility. So with Pinpoint Extensions, as we call them, you can actually bring your own channel. What you can, and by bring your own channel, I mean you can have a channel wrapped in a Lambda and send messages to the channel and leverage Pinpoint's targeting and segmentation capabilities. A good example here is one of my customers wanted to bring in use an in-product messaging channel, and the in-product messaging channel is for usage alerts based on how customers were using their product. And another example here could be some of the gaming customers that we've talked to. They've said, hey, as we are building the game, we have an in-game channel. How do we send messages to that in-game channel? And a good way to implement that would be using Lambda, and you can say instantiate that channel on a Lambda function and extend that within Pinpoint itself. Benefit here on extending it like that would be, again, you can continue benefiting from the streamlined analytics pipeline. We said we can use Lambda for sending, but we also thought about we can use Lambda for filtering. So a lot of customers have sensitive data that they don't want to. Not coming? You can't hear me? Guys, there's some issue here. Can you hear me now? No. Hello? Is it better now? No? No, they can't hear. Hello? Now? No. You can hear. Okay. sorry for this, guys. Happens every presentation. Something has to happen. But good. All right. So I think. I think they're going to change it. So give me one sec. Thank you. Oh wait. How about now? Good? Awesome. So, how much should I rewind? Did you start of the slide? Did you guys get that? No. Yes or no? Oh, you got it. Okay. So, let me start from the beginning on this slide, right? So, we had this thought process on we will never support all channels that customers want. And how do we enable, so how do we, what solution do we offer customers for channels that we don't own or don't manage? That's when Lambda came in as a thought process, and that's when we launched Pinpoint Extensions. And the thought process here is, with extensions, you can be able to bring your own channel. The example that I was giving here was, one of my customers has an in-product channel, which is, and a good way to think about this is game developers have in-game channels to establish messaging and message with consumers during the game as they're playing it. Another use case here is in-console games, right? How do you message in console games? Lambda, you can instantiate that messaging channel within Lambda and then use Pinpoint's benefits of like Pinpoint's targeting, message creation, and scheduling functionality to fan out messages to those in-game channels or in-app channels. Same way, similar to that fan out, we said we can extend this further to say as Lambda as a filter for transient filters. Where does that come in is you have a lot of some use cases, especially in the US, one of the customers we had was, hey, I want to be able to send credit score alerts. When a credit score of a customer dips, I want to be able to send a credit score alert to a customer. And the challenge here is credit score for any consumer is a highly confidential PII data that customers don't want to keep in a black box and not exposed to any system. And that's where Lambda comes in, where as a filter, at message fan out, you can instantiate the Lambda to add a transient variable to the message payload. And that transient variable is not stored in the Pinpoint system, is part of just the message body, and enables you to actually add that credit score as a message variable with just at the time of send. We are seeing a lot more use cases on the Lambda side of things, and we continue to actually, we believe that these use cases will continue to evolve. I think with that, we would love your feedback, guys. Thanks for patiently listening to me. Would love your feedback on the session, and thank you. This was awesome. Any questions? Or Kadir and I will be outside down below to answer any questions you might have. Yep, go ahead. I'm sorry. Not right now. Pinpoint is not available in Mumbai region. That's a great question. We plan to add support in the BOM region shortly, and it's on our roadmap. One input on the region's specific pieces is data fan out and message fan out based on regions. It's not as impactful in terms of latencies or impacting latencies because of each message gets hopped based on the ISPs or the routes you take. So we have not seen degradation in terms of message latency based on regions. It's more critical when you think about data sovereignty issues or issues with regards to how do you handle for analytics use cases. But we are aware of that, and that's something that we are working on solving for.